This video is going to have a look at how do we use and prepare box plots, which are based on 5 number summaries. So a box and whisker plot, as we will sometimes call it, is going to be a graphical representation of a 5 number summary. It is a powerful way to show the spread of a data. So if you have an outlier, or if you have numbers that are not very close together, this will give you a really good visual representation of what the data set spread is going to look like. So a box plot or box and whisker plot looks like what is on the screen. We can see that we have got a box. That box is our middle 50% of the data, and on each side is the whisker, which represents 25% of the data. So our dot at the beginning represents the lowest score. Then the first line represents our quartile 1 value. The next line is the median value. Then we've got our quartile 3 value, and then we've got our highest score. So the box spans the interquartile range. The median is the line in the middle of the box. The whiskers indicate the total range out to the highest and the lowest number. When we are drawing box and whisker plots, it is very, very, very important that they are drawn to scale. So down the bottom, you are going to need a scale, and those numbers on the scale need to be evenly paced. So you've got to have the same distance between every number, and you need to go up by the same amount every time. So you might go up by 1s, or you might be going up by 2s, 3s, or 5s. Got to be consistent. Every time on that scale you increase a space, you got to go up by the same number of values. So when we have a box and whisker plot, and because it represents our 5 number summary, 25% of the data is going to be in each section. So we have 25% in the first section, 25% in the second section, 25% in the third section, 25% in the fourth section. Now each of those sections may not be evenly spaced. You might have one section that is really long because we have an outlier, or the numbers are even, or our numbers are not spaced together very closely, or a section might be really small because all the numbers are really close together. This gives us our visual representation of the box and whisker plot. If you do have an outlier that you've identified, it does change the box and whisker plot a little bit. When you draw your box and whisker plot, the outliers are marked with a cross, and then the end of your box and whisker plot becomes your next value. So for example, here we have got a small outlier of 5. So that's marked with an X, and then our box and whisker plot starts at our next smallest number, which is 15. So that's just a modification when you do have an outlier, that you mark it with an X. So having a look at an example as to how do we draw a box and whisker plot, and we've got a 5 number summary. If the question doesn't give you a 5 number summary, you need to prepare one. So if you're not sure how to prepare a 5 number summary, go back and have a look at the video on 5 number summaries. But here we've got 110, 119, 122, 125, and 128. Now my box and whisker plot needs to go from 110 to 128. So I need to make sure that my scale goes between those numbers. So having a look at the scale that I've got, it starts at 108, goes up in 2s every time till I get to 130. That is a nice consistent scale that is going to fit my box and whisker plot on. Please, if your first number is 110, don't start your scale at 0, because you're going to have a whole lot of space followed by a very small box and whisker plot. Start it near the lowest number, finish it near the highest number, so your box and whisker plot is nice and large. So to draw the box and whisker plot, start off by putting a little dot where your smallest value is. So for us, that's going to be 110. Then put a dot where your largest value is, which is going to be 128. Now we draw lines in. So we'll start with drawing a line in for our quartile 1 value of 119. draw a line in for our median value of 122, then draw a line in for our quartile 3 value of 125. So now we've marked in all of our numbers, our highest and lowest number with a dot, the rest of the numbers with lines. We join our line between quartile 1 and quartile 3 with straight lines to form our box. Then we draw 2 lines out to the highest and smallest number to be able to form our whiskers. So that is our box and whisker plot. If the box and whisker plot represents something, make sure that you are putting a label on it. In here, we don't need a label on it, so we just leave it as it is because we don't know what the data is representing. So having a look at our second example, this time we have a box and whisker plot and we want to use it to be able to answer some questions. So the box and whisker plot is the final points scored by a football team over a season's roster. And we can see that our scale goes from 50 to 150. So we've got a pretty wide spread of data. So going through and having a look at the questions, A is what is the team's greatest points scored? And we can see that our greatest point score is going to be up where our box and whisker plot finishes, which is 140. So the highest score is 140. The least score, looking down the other end, is going to be 56. Guys, when you are looking at these box and whisker plots, if the scale is quite large and going up in 20s, there may be some variance in your answers. When we are marking exam questions and we can see that your interpretation is reasonable based on the box plot, you get marked correct. So your answer might vary by 1 or 2, but that is okay. It is still marked correct as long as it is reasonable based on the box plot that is drawn. So if you said that the smallest number was 50, that is obviously not reasonable and will not be marked correct. So C, the team's median score, we have a look for our middle line, and that is going to be 90. So the range of points scored is going to be our largest minus our smallest values. So 140 minus 56, which is equal to 84. Then finally, our interquartile range. We need our quartile 3 values and our quartile 1 value. So quartile 3 is going to be 102. Quartile 1 is going to be 76. So 102 minus 76 is 23. So my interquartile range is going to be 26. Remembering when you're completing questions like this, your answers may vary between 1 or 2. That is okay. As long as it is reasonable based on the box plot, you will be marked correct. So that's an example of box and whisker plots and how do we prepare them and how do we interpret them to be able to analyze the data.